And today we're taking a look at the Marshall YJM100 Yngwie Malmsteen Signature Series amplifier. Now, Signature Series amplifiers by their very nature usually reflect the unique personality of the player that they are designed for, but whilst the YJM100 does this, it also feels much more like an everyman's amp thanks to its great features. The YJM100 is basically like a very highly hot-rodded 1959 Super Lead, but whereas a standard 1959 needs to be cranked up until your eyes bleed or small animals get blasted across the room, the YJM100 has several great features that keep the tone cooking, but at volumes that don't make small birds fall out of the sky or your double glazing explode all over the garden. Well, here we are. We're looking at the rear panel on the YJM100. Now, this amplifier has some smashing features that make it, we said before, like an everyman's Marshall. In my opinion, I think it's a very well designed amp that steps beyond the sort of limitations of a purely vintage reissue amplifier and really makes this amplifier very flexible and versatile. Probably the most significant feature is the power attenuator here, which is a rotary knob that allows you to adjust the amp's output between 0.1% and 100% and every point in between. This is a very useful feature because you can control the overall output to adjust it to whether you're on stage, in the studio, or even in your bedroom. The half power switch selects the output between 100 watts and 50 watts. There's not really that much difference in volume between the two settings, but there is a slightly different timbre between 100 watts and 50 watts, and maybe one might argue that 50 watts sounds a little bit sweeter and maybe a bit more flexible too, especially if you play smaller size venues where you don't need so much oomph from the 100 watt setting. There's also a built-in boost here. Now, the boost has an adjustable gain and an adjustable volume. It's almost like channel switching, but not quite. It's really giving your core tone a nice big firm kick in the pants without actually changing your sound too much. There's also a built-in noise gate which is linked to the boost that can be separate or used in conjunction with the boost circuit. And the noise gate comes in especially handy when you're using single coil pickups as well. There's also digital reverb. The reverb is not my favourite effect in this amplifier. I think sometimes it sounds a bit odd. Probably some practice at setting the level should help to sort this out. Just takes a bit of time to get used to, I think. Okay, I'll demonstrate the boost circuit for you now. I've got the foot switch here in front of me on the floor, which I'll show you in detail in a moment. And basically, as I said earlier, the boost is not really channel switching, it's just literally a boost. So I'm going to go from our original cleanish tone and kick in the boosted signal just to give you an illustration of what it sounds like. This time I'll kick in the boost and I'll also bring in the noise gate. Even with humbucking pickups, because of the lighting we've got here, there is a little bit of hum coming from the amp, so I'll use the noise gate to control that with the boost on. I'll kick in some reverb as well, give you an idea of what the reverb sounds like on the overdriven sound and on the clean sound. You can adjust the reverb depth as well, from a slight shimmer to a really nice big washy sound. If you prefer to use your own existing effects units, the YJM100 also has an effects loop, send and return here on the back, that you can activate with the included foot switch. For your roadie, there are tube warning indicator lights here that give you warning when one of the output tubes is about to let go, so that you can change it. Marshall also claimed that the YJM100 amp has auto biasing, which means that you can replace the tubes on the road without having to take your amp to an amp tech to do it for you, although there is still a bias adjustment control on the back here if you really wanted to fine tune the bias. I think the auto bias is basically so if the amp goes wrong in the middle of a gig, you can replace the power tubes and it'll get you through to the end, and then you can adjust the bias later on when you really want to make sure you get the maximum efficiency from the valves. If you prefer to use your own existing effects units, the YJM100 also has an effects loop, send and return here on the back, that you can activate with the included foot switch. Full marks, in our opinion, to YJM100 and Marshall for coming up with such a well-grounded and superbly spec'd amp. But if you're looking for an amplifier either as a collector or as an amp to take out and gig every week, I really think that Marshall are onto something with the YJM100. It's a great amp. Well, we hope you enjoyed this review, and we look forward to seeing you again soon in playmusicmag.com. Bye bye.